Well, hey, if you don't know me, I'm Kade, creator of Collaborate Worship, and today I'm joined by Ryan Dahl from PraiseCharts. We're going to be talking about how worship music has changed over the past couple of decades. It's really good stuff, so let's go. Well, Ryan, welcome to Collaborate Worship. I'm really excited for this conversation, but before we get into that, go ahead and take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us about PraiseCharts.
Well, I am Ryan Dahl, the founder of PraiseCharts. It's a little company I started 24 years ago. I was a little worship pastor leading worship in a gym with terrible sound system and awful sounding band, but we had great little community, and I was inspired to, try to bring on the young people. I had trumpet players and tuba and violins and oboe, and sometimes they kind of clashed, but I was inspired by the whole world of worship that was just evolving in such rapid pace, especially in the mid 90s. I'm almost 52 years old now, so this was like when I was in my mid 20s. I had no idea how the whole Christian worship music industry worked. I wasn't really an experienced business person, so pretty much I made it up every step of the way, and certainly have stumbled a little bit. But yeah, here we are in my office. You can see my little dartboard in the back. So for whatever I've done, I was able to get a dartboard in my office. So I think that's kind of fun. And yeah, got a great team. We got a local office here. There's me and two guys. And then I have several other full-time staff that work in their homes, and lots of arrangers and producers that chime in from all around the country, a few people that help from around the world even. And it's great. I mean, I don't know, living the dream. What could I say? I'm doing what I love to do, serving people. It's all about music and charts and other nerdy, math and things like that I enjoy. And so just loving it.
Well, I love it, man, and you're such an encouragement to me because I'm not as far into it as you are. I've been doing Collaborate Worship for about 7 years now, so
Yeah.
It's just encouraging to see that here you are, many decades later, and you're still at it and still moving forward, and yeah, it's incredible. You could probably tell us, what's the upcoming song for worship and which ones are dying off just based on your stats, huh?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, I mean, since you asked, is one song I'm really liking that I am finding is really catching a wave, and certainly because of Easter, it's a passion song called "What He's Done." Have you heard that one?
I don't think so.
It's from the latest Passion album, and Passion actually just released a choral version of the song. I've seen probably 5 or 6 versions of it come out, but the choral version now is really catching on. It's got this kind of black gospel vibe to it, and it's a beautiful, anybody could play it. I led it at my church a couple of weeks ago. So if you're looking for a song that is really catching wind, it's kind of new, you'd barely have to teach it. People can learn it by the second verse. I would highly recommend that one. So there you go. There's a free one for you.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask this question for selfish reasons. I mean, there's a new worship artist coming on the scene, Charity Gale. Have you heard of her?
Oh, I played with her. I played for her. It was the best
awesome.
night of my life. It was awesome.
So I'm just curious, with your stats, whenever I hear her songs, I'm like, oh, these are just going to be like the next greatest worship song, across the nation. Is that true?
Seriously. Right now, Charity is reigning #1 in PraiseCharts, and she just won't go away. So that song, Thank You, Jesus, for the Blood, and then I Speak Jesus has been huge, but so many songs from that album. And I mean, I'm like you. I kind of fell in love with her voice, just her way of leading. And so we were at a choral conference. We actually paid to bring Charity to the conference as a guest of PraiseCharts, and that's kind of how I got an opportunity to speak with her. We did a workshop together, and then I went over down to the piano, and I was playing on the piano, and she started singing "Thank You, Jesus, for the Blood." I was like, oh my goodness, I am like in heaven right now. And then that night, Travis Cottrell was putting on a concert. We inserted charity into that concert, so it was like the full band, and got to play a couple of more, rocking songs with the full band, and those are like, it was like a night of a lifetime for me to experience that, and so I'm a big fan. There you go.
Yep, that's awesome. That kind of gives me a little bit of confirmation. I just have kind of like this intuition whenever I hear a song. Like sometimes I'll hear a song for the first time and be like, it's going to be the next big song. I thought the same thing with What a Beautiful Name several years ago. Whenever that came out, I'm like, this is going to be across the night. I don't know what it is. It's probably just the fact that I used to create piano tutorials. There's a YouTube channel for that. I don't do it anymore, but the more worship songs you hear and the more you watch the trends, the more you can kind of pick up on like, that's going to be the next one.
Fascinated by all of that. So maybe I should clue into you. If like we think a song is going to hit, maybe I should be asking you. You could be like the future teller of songs.
That would be fun. Awesome, man. I want to jump in here for just a few seconds to tell you about Church Sound Made Simple. The resources that PraiseCharts offers will definitely help the band give you a great sound to work with, but you also need to get it right at the mixer. My stress-free online training will teach you compression, EQ, how to layer your mix, and everything else you need to create a great mix every time. Get access today by visiting churchsoundmadesimple.com. All right, so here's the deal. We can't all have a huge team, like these big artists like Maverick City or Elevation or Hillsong. So what can churches do to get that fuller sound with a smaller team?
Well, okay, so certainly there, like one interesting element that you could do is using a multi-track or the sounds from a multi-track to enhance your live sound, not to become your live sound. That would be something I'd want to encourage you. Like, don't become a karaoke church. Have a sound that reflects who you actually are. But here's a unique thing about multi-tracks is the reason why it's called a multi-track is it's not just one track or two tracks. It's actually like 12 different things, and you can raise things up and pull things down and all that kind of stuff. So, for example, if you wanted to play with an acoustic guitar, a bass, and like a trumpet and a flute, maybe that's all that you had. It could be that's what some churches have. Then you could use a multi-track to bring in a little bit of drums, maybe enhance the flute, put some strings in there. So now you're sort of fleshing out, but you're not overtaking your genuine, authentic live sound. And so I just would want to encourage churches to like, don't just have a vision to sound like the recording. Have a vision to have your own sound, and even as you use charts from PraiseCharts or wherever you get them, or tracks and things like that, is like our resources are just meant to give you kind of a leg up. They're not meant to be like the master template that you only follow. So that would be one idea. But I guess another thing I would just say is as well is the goal isn't to have the biggest worship team. If you have a small church, then it's okay to have a small team. And some of the most wonderful worship experiences and worship sounds can be a very acoustic, dialed back sound. So yeah, you don't have to sound like Maverick City. You don't have to sound like Bethel or Hillsong. They all just sound like what their church is. So you got to go, okay, well, who do we have? How big is our church? What's the acoustic environment? How can we dial in like a signature sound for our church? And so that would also be something that I would. So I guess those two things is you can flesh out with tracks if you want to just sort of embellish your sound, make it sound a little fuller, fill in some of those what you might call sonic gaps so that it's just, but still pursue something that is authentically you. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, that's really solid advice. We use a similar strategy at my church. We have a full band, but we still use tracks to fill in some of those gaps. And really what we use tracks for is to add those things that I call it kind of the shimmer frequency range that the other instruments aren't covering. And even the kind of the repetitive things that are going on in songs sometimes. That way a pianist doesn't have to sit over there and like do the same thing through the whole song. You can just let the track cover that. So.
Yeah, we have a product in PraiseCharts we kind of invented Well, we call it the click track. And so all that a click track has, it's just an MP3, so a stereo MP3, and then one side is the click, but in the other side is all those exact sounds that you're talking about. They're ones you probably wouldn't play from a live instrument. They're kind of like loopy or very synthesized, but they just give that intrigue to the sound. So there you go. That's kind of what a click track actually is intended for, all those kind of sounds.
Awesome, man. Let me interrupt this conversation real quick just to ask if you're enjoying this video, let us know with the like. It may seem like something small, but hitting that like button helps us get this free content out to others just like you who are finding it helpful. So go ahead and smash that like button. All right, man. So PraiseCharts has been around since 1998. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep. September 1998.
Awesome. So you've walked through a lot of changes over the years.
Yeah.
So what has PraiseCharts become today versus like kind of how it got started, and how are you continuing to resource the church in this season?
Yeah. Well, I would say, it was really important as PraiseCharts came into the world of music publishing that we had to establish a trust relationship with a lot of the publishers and in some ways the artists, but really the publishers and the administrators of the copyrights of the music are kind of like the gatekeepers. So, and it's like, you have to show that you're a trustworthy person, that you're doing, a decent kind of business service, and that took time. In fact, a lot of time, and there was a lot of frustration, some levels of competition. It was like a minefield that we kind of had to wade through. But fortunately, I suppose, and in some ways, this is why PraiseCharts even started, is because the church music world was going through so much change that really started in the late 90s. Because the other thing that happened in the 90s, probably, I don't know how old you are, Kade, but I was mid 20s. I got my first email address in the mid 90s. Do you remember when you got your first email address, or what it was?
It would have been later than that. I was born in 88, so in the 90s, I was just a kid.
Okay. Well, for anyone who's maybe 40 or older, it's, they would remember the mid to late 90s, that whole era was starting to shift. So, anyways, that it was going to have a deep impact on how music was delivered. Audio music was about to go through a massive transition. We were just getting CDs at the time, but that whole transition had to happen. And then sheet music, going from paper delivery to like a PDF or, an online print. And now even more recently, like probably for the first 20 years of PraiseCharts, the idea of it was to deliver a digital file that would ultimately get printed on the other side. But now most of the music isn't even getting printed because iPads are much more common, right? And we use Planning Center, Music Stand, or there's different apps, and it's like paper isn't even an option. That's literally impacting how we design our sheet music, because I used to make charts and try to save paper because I wanted to save the forests. But now I'm telling my arrangers we don't have to save forests anymore because trees aren't coming down. Now it's more important to have the song flow from beginning to end and not make you go back 4 pages on the DS al coda, if you know any music terminology, and find the repeats. And we're rethinking all those like technical musical things because of the technology of digital sheet music. So that's kind of an interesting shift that has happened, I guess you might say.
So you're telling me that whenever you first got started, you were actually shipping printed things to people? Yep. That's how you were delivering the charts?
I literally, in the very beginning of PraiseCharts, I can remember the manila covered colored envelopes. I would lick the envelopes. I would write the address on there. And it went from that to fax. If you had a fax machine, I had one of those in a little drum. I would stuff a 20-page orchestration into a little fax thing and dial the number, send it off. And then at page 7, the paper would go into the fax machine, and I'd have to like yank it out, and then restart the process again. Then I went to WinFax. WinFax was like a Windows-based fax system so that you could store the music on your computer, but it would still dial out to fax machine. Then I went to eFax, which was another version of a fax, but it was all going through the computer. So I was like literally making slow incremental changes that moved from physical sheet music to a traditional fax to a digital fax, ultimately to PDF. And we just have stuck with PDFs because it's so common and so easy. It's like paper. So yeah, there you go. That's that story.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of changes. And I can even
Yep.
remember as a worship leader in youth band back in the days. And so we didn't have Planning Center or even really MP3s back then. I think you could have an MP3 player like an iPod, but that was as advanced as it got. So to quit
Yep.
my worship team, I remember burning CDs
Yep.
of the songs that we were going to play over the next coming 3 months or whatever. And
Yep.
yeah, printing off that sheet
Totally.
music for them. But man, things have
Yep.
changed a lot.
Yeah. We went through a season once where I couldn't get a license to deliver a certain set of songs via download, but we could get a license to deliver the music by CD-ROM. So then I bought one of these little machines where you could stick 100 CD-ROMs in a tower, and then I hired a programmer to figure out how to take our order and automatically convert it. And this little arm came and grabbed the CD and put it onto the recorder and shoved it in and printed it. It was this whole little internal techie system to overcome that problem. But those were the days.
It's good stuff. Well, Ryan, before we end this interview, I was wondering if you would be willing to give us kind of an insider look at what's coming next for Praise Charts.
Well, I mean, we have been talking certainly about the choral side of things, which choral is kind of certainly old. It's been around for, hundreds of years, and people might think, well, that's boring and that's not very new. But we're definitely trying to take a very fresh look at that and have a vision to encourage churches to like sound modern and sound current, but still involve like a whole team of musicians and even orchestra in your church. Whether an orchestra for you is a couple of flutes and an oboe, or it might be a full orchestra. But we've been making this new series called the Signature Sessions. It's something that we've created right straight out of Praise Charts. It's got these awesome kind of symphonic, cinematic kind of orchestral sound to it, and then we've written charts for that. So that's all very fresh and new. And interesting enough, another new but kind of old thing is we're going to be actually offering printable print music from Praise Charts, because a lot of choirs, they want like to be able to hold and page through those little octavo booklets. So within a month you'll be able to order a lot of our music via print. It's a print on demand kind of system, so that the order will just go out to some little print company, and I don't even know where they're based, but they will manage it and send it off. So that's kind of a cool thing. But on a more technical level, another big development that is on the horizon in Praise Charts is trying to approach our intersection with people as individuals who are part of a community, who are part of a church. So right now, when you come to Praise Charts, it's kind of like it's you and your account, but it's not really like you in the context of your church, right? And to Praise Charts. So we want to have a relationship with you and know that, when you buy music, you can easily distribute it to the 10 or 12 or 50 or however many other people on your team. And then also even have a relationship to you that might say, I know that you go to South Hill Community Church, but you also are a part of North Park Church. So you can imagine all the complex interrelationships that we have, so that you come to Praise Charts and you're like, hey, let me just pull out my North Park catalog here. I'm going to get the music out of that, and I've got that team. And then I'm going to unplug out of that and go into my other account. And so in the back end, what we're trying to do is like legitimize how you get music and distribute it to your team, so that you don't have to think about the burden of copyright legalities and all of that. It's simple, it's easy. I got the charts, it's in the key I want. I can send it to my team and I don't have to feel guilty, right? So we're trying to make that process really, really, really easy. And then it's just a matter of constantly pumping new music in, and we have really great relationships with like Capital Music, Essential Music, Integrity, Hillsong, Bethel, Elevation, all of these like major Getty. I'm super close friends with Keith Getty and Kristen Getty and Travis Cottrell and Paul Baloche. A number of artists like that are relationships I've been able to develop over the years, and many of them are in direct connection with us, and they're saying, "Hey, we got this new album, this new song. We just had staff meeting like an hour ago, and my publishing manager is like, I can't keep up with all the music that is constantly filling my email box. We just launched Chris Tomlin's latest new songs. Speaking of that, his song Always is like really the latest, what we call a breakout song. So if you haven't heard that, he's got a new single, Always, and you, the master of knowing whether a song's going to break out in the future, you should listen to it and see if it passes your test. So
awesome, man.
So
I'll take
anyways,
a listen.
that's definitely on the horizon. Lots of new music and more streamlined ways of engaging with you as a worship pastor or a worship administrator, so you can get the music to your team and be able to, have community and lead worship on Sundays or whenever.
Well, thanks so much, Ryan. This conversation's been incredible. And thanks so much for what you do through PraiseCharts. And why don't you tell everybody the best way that they can go get connected with PraiseCharts if they're not already?
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy. You just go to PraiseCharts.com, and then there's a ton of free music. I'll just tell you this, like one thing we're giving away for free right now, a couple of things. We have main stage patches. If you're a keyboard player, all our main stage patches are free. We've got like over 100 of them. And stage charts is a type of chart I just invented. It's just got the chords, but they're super helpful if you know the song and you just want to know the progressions. So if you pick up one of those, all you got to do is drop your email address in. It creates a free account, and then you can just go in and, the chord charts are cheap. Certainly what would take you and what takes me like an hour and a half or an hour to make, going through several layers of editing, you can pick up for a couple of bucks. And I think it's worth it. I think we're all worth a couple bucks an hour, don't you think? So
for sure. All right, everybody, go check out PraiseCharts.com and take advantage of all those resources that he just talked about. And thanks so much for taking the time to watch. And if you enjoyed this video, just let us know with a like, and be sure to subscribe so you can see future videos like this. We'll see you next time.